For over 2,000 years, one philosophy has guided generals on the battlefield, emperors on their thrones, and ordinary men and women in the face of pain, loss, and uncertainty. This is Stoicism, a philosophy born in the streets of Athens, refined in the halls of Rome, and still alive today in boardrooms, locker rooms, and daily life. Stoicism is not just theory. It's not abstract debate. It's a practical guide to living with strength, wisdom, and peace of mind, no matter what the world throws at you. In this video, you will discover the story of Stoicism, the lives of its greatest teachers, and the timeless principles that can transform your life, just as they did for some of the greatest figures in history. The origins of Stoicism. Stoicism was born over 2,000 years ago in Athens at a time when the world was changing rapidly. After the death of Alexander the Great, Greece was no longer the center of political power, but it remained the beating heart of philosophy. It was here, around 300 BC, that Zeno of Citium arrived. Zeno was a merchant from Cyprus who lost everything in a shipwreck. Stranded and broken, he wandered into a bookshop in Athens and began reading about the life of Socrates. Those words lit a fire inside him. Zeno sought out philosophers and teachers, and soon he began to gather students of his own. But unlike other schools of philosophy, Zeno didn't teach inside rich academies or hidden gardens. He taught in the open air under a painted porch in the marketplace of Athens. This place was called the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, and from it his philosophy would take its name, Stoicism. What made Stoicism different was its purpose. It wasn't about winning arguments or memorizing abstract theories. Stoicism was a philosophy for life, practical, direct, and designed to help people live with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. It was a philosophy for merchants and soldiers, for politicians and citizens, a philosophy that could guide anyone, anywhere, in any situation. And from that painted porch in Athens, Stoicism would spread across the ancient world, shaping lives for centuries to come. Seneca, the philosopher of time and power. Seneca was one of the most fascinating and paradoxical figures in Roman history. Born into a wealthy family in Spain around 4 BC, he rose to become one of the most powerful men in Rome. He was a senator, a statesman, and even advisor to Emperor Nero himself. His fortune was immense, his villas luxurious, his influence unmatched. And yet, in his writings, Seneca spoke not about power, but about how fragile life is. He didn't glorify wealth. He warned against being enslaved by it. In his famous essay on the shortness of life, Seneca reminds us, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." These words hit us today as strongly as they did 2,000 years ago. Seneca saw how people busied themselves with endless distractions, politics, gossip, ambition, while neglecting the only resource they could never recover, time. For Seneca, time was more valuable than gold, more precious than jewels. A man could be rich in possessions and yet poor in life if he wasted his days on meaningless pursuits. Despite his immense wealth, Seneca practiced Stoic exercises to free himself from attachment. He would eat simple meals, dress in rough clothing, and ask himself, "Is this what I feared?" He wanted to prove that comfort and luxury were nice but never necessary. He also wrote deeply about death, not as something to be feared, but as something natural, even liberating. To remember death was to remember what truly matters. He said, "It is not that death is terrible, but the fear of death that makes it so." Perhaps most famously, Seneca warned about anger. In his work on anger, he called it the most hideous and frenzied of all emotions. He had seen how rage destroyed families, friendships, and even empires. For him, true strength was not in conquering others, but in conquering one's temper. Seneca's life was not without controversy. He was accused of hypocrisy, of preaching simplicity while enjoying riches. Yet this paradox is exactly what makes him human and relatable. He wasn't a monk living in isolation. He was a man in the heart of politics and power, trying to live with virtue in the middle of temptation. And perhaps that is why his words still matter today. Because like us, Seneca lived in a world of distractions, wealth, and ambition. He struggled, he failed, he tried again. His lesson is timeless. Life is short, death is certain, and time is the only wealth you can never buy back. Use it well. Epictetus, freedom from within. If Seneca represented wealth and power, Epictetus represented the opposite, a life of hardship and humility. Born around 55 AD in what is now Turkey, Epictetus entered the world with nothing. He lived under difficult conditions, and his body bore the marks of suffering for much of his life. And yet, from these beginnings, Epictetus rose to become one of the most influential teachers of philosophy in history. How? By discovering that true freedom has nothing to do with possessions or circumstances. It comes from within. Epictetus often reminded his students, "No man is free who is not master of himself." For him, freedom was not political. It was not financial. It was not even physical. Freedom was the ability to control your thoughts, your choices, and your responses to life. His most famous teaching is what we now call the Dichotomy of Control. Some things are within our control, our judgments, our actions, our values. Other things are outside of our control, our health, our reputation, our wealth, and even life itself. Wisdom begins when you stop trying to control what you can't and instead master what you can. Epictetus practiced what he preached. He lived simply with very little, but he was rich in peace of mind. He opened a small school of philosophy in Nicopolis, where his lessons attracted students from across the empire. His words were not polished speeches for senators. They were practical commands for life. Thanks to one of his devoted students, Arian, we have two works that preserve Epictetus's voice: the Discourses and the Enchiridion. These are not abstract books of theory. They are guides, written like reminders, almost like training manuals for the soul. Epictetus taught his students to wake up each day prepared for obstacles, to remember that insults, pain, and setbacks are part of life. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That line alone could serve as the summary of all Stoicism. He also prepared his students for death, reminding them that it is not tragedy but nature. He would say, "I cannot escape death, but I can escape the fear of it." And when it came to adversity, Epictetus flipped the script. Challenges were not curses, but opportunities. Every hardship was a chance to practice courage, patience, or resilience. Epictetus's life teaches us this: you don't need wealth, status, or perfect health to be free. You only need mastery of yourself. In a world where we constantly chase control over things outside us, money, approval, success, Epictetus's voice cuts through like a sword. Focus on yourself. Master your mind. That is true freedom. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. Among all the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius holds a unique place. He was not just a thinker, not just a teacher. He was the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world. Born in 121 AD, Marcus was groomed for leadership from a young age. But unlike many emperors, he was deeply drawn to philosophy. He studied under Stoic teachers, read widely, and cultivated a life of reflection even as he rose through the ranks of Roman politics. When he finally became emperor, Marcus Aurelius faced constant challenges. Wars on the empire's borders, plagues sweeping through the cities, political unrest, and personal tragedy. He buried children, fought endless battles, and carried the burden of leading millions of people. And yet, in the quiet of the night, he would sit down and write in his journal. These writings, never meant to be published, became one of the most remarkable books in history. Meditations. In those pages, we don't see a distant ruler. We see a man, tired, struggling, doubting, but determined to live with virtue. His notes are not lofty speeches, they are reminders to himself. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I will meet with interference, ingratitude, arrogance, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. All of them happen to those who do not know good from evil. This was an emperor preparing himself for the daily frustrations we all face, just on a larger scale. Marcus constantly reminded himself of the brevity of life. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. For him, remembering death was not about despair. It was about urgency. It was about living each day with justice, humility, and service. He also spoke about unity, reminding himself that he was not above others. What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. Even as emperor, Marcus Aurelius placed duty to others above personal gain. What makes Marcus so powerful as a Stoic figure is this. He carried the weight of an empire, but he still wrestled with the same fears and frustrations as us. He doubted himself. He felt anger. He grieved. He longed for peace. And in those struggles, he wrote his way back to wisdom. Marcus Aurelius shows us that Stoicism is not about being perfect. It's about constantly reminding ourselves of how to live rightly, even when life is unbearably heavy. His legacy is not the conquests of Rome or the titles of emperorship. His legacy is Meditations, a private journal that has become a guide for millions across the centuries. Marcus teaches us that even at the height of power, the greatest victory is mastery of oneself. He core pillars of Stoicism. 1. The Dichotomy of Control. At the heart of Stoicism lies a simple but life-changing insight. Some things are within our control and others are not. Epictetus framed it clearly. We cannot control the weather, the economy, or what others say about us. We cannot control whether fortune favors us or whether death comes sooner than expected. But we can control our judgments, our choices, our values, and our actions. This simple distinction is the key to freedom. Anxiety, anger, and frustration often come when we confuse the two, when we try to control the uncontrollable. The Stoics remind us peace begins when we stop wasting energy on the external and focus only on what is truly ours: our mind, our will, our character. 2. The four virtues. The Stoics believed that the good life could be reduced to four essential virtues: wisdom, the ability to see the world clearly and act rightly; courage, the strength to face fear, pain, or death with dignity; justice, the commitment to fairness, honesty, and service to others; temperance, the discipline to control our desires and live with balance. Everything else, wealth, pleasure, reputation, was secondary. For a Stoic, to live with virtue was to live in alignment with reason, with nature, and with the highest part of ourselves. 3. Memento Mori. Remember death. The Stoics kept death constantly in mind, not as a morbid obsession but as a source of clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do, say, and think. By remembering death, we sharpen our focus on life. We stop wasting time on trivialities. We stop procrastinating. We begin to live as if every day mattered because it does. Memento Mori is not about fearing the end. It is about valuing the present. 4. Amor Fati. Love of fate. Perhaps the most radical Stoic principle is Amor Fati, love your fate. Most of us spend life wishing circumstances were different, resisting pain and resenting hardship. But the Stoics taught that everything that happens, good or bad, can serve us if we choose to use it. Don't just accept life, don't just endure it, love it. Because every obstacle is a lesson, every setback is training, every hardship is a chance to become wiser, stronger, and more resilient. As Marcus Aurelius put it, a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. The Stoic does not ask, "Why me?" The Stoic says, "Try me." From a painted porch in Athens, to the halls of Roman power, to the pages of private journals that survived 2,000 years. Stoicism has endured because it is not just a theory, it is a way of life. Zeno taught that philosophy should be lived, not debated. Seneca reminded us that time is our most precious wealth. Epictetus showed that true freedom comes from within. Marcus Aurelius proved that even an emperor needs daily reminders to live with humility and justice. The message of Stoicism is as urgent today as it was then. You cannot control the world, but you can always control yourself. And if you master yourself, your thoughts, your actions, your virtues, then no fortune, no pain, no insult, and no loss can ever truly defeat you. This is why Stoicism shaped emperors, guided warriors, and gave strength to men in chains. And this is why it can shape you too. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. We publish new content every week to help you live stronger, calmer, and wiser, just as the Stoics intended.